Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. I'm Wiley, your favorite information scientist in training. I'm also an engineering and physical sciences research data services librarian. And I am a 6-year information science PhD candidate studying race, digital studies, and intersectionality. And this morning, I'm going to share an experience that I had today on the internet. We're calling this Wiley Has Time. So this is what has happened. It's light, but I think it's important to talk about. I'm only going to share part of their name, not their whole name. But one particular person, Dr. Shante, she wrote today on Threads. Why are the Gaza protesters and hecklers showing up at Kamala's book tour, interrupting the event? She is not the president. Why aren't they in front of the White House? And I'm asking out of genuine ignorance, but did the US support of Israel start with Biden and Harris? Because they seem to be shouldering the lion's share of the blame. That was her question. I responded to the third part in talking about how the United States has had a relationship with Israel since the Kennedy era. And I even provided, and I said that every president has upheld this relationship. And I provided, for more information, check out Keith Felderman's work, Shadow over Palestine, the introduction, and chapter 1, Specters of Genocide, provide like historical detail of this relationship. And I went on about my day. You might ask, why do you know that, Wiley? Because I took Race and Cultural Critique by Dr. Lila Sharif, and Keith Felderman came to our course. I facilitated that conversation in the class and did a whole presentation about that. So that was just one of the resources. There are many, many, many others. And but that was just one that stood out in my mind because of the historical look at the relationship itself. And here's why I think that's important, because sometime later I got someone that wrote, so what? How does this answer the question of the post? And it did make me laugh, because it often makes me think about reading comprehension, critical thinking skills, and the absence of that in internet conversation. And I even double checked, because I was like, maybe she was talking to somebody, and not, it wasn't the creator of the post that made that. So what? It was someone else. And I went and follow, because you can follow the thread. And I went and followed the thread, and I was like, oh no, they meant to me. And so I just wrote back, it answers the origins of the question, that it started with the Kennedy administration, not Biden and Harris, and just left it at that. And I've just been thinking about, pretty much for the last 4 years, I've been often thinking that critical thinking skills are in decline. It isn't just democracy. But on just a short, quick tip, I often think about, like, how oftentimes in conversation you hear, do your research, but what does that mean in everyday terms? Because I can tell you, in academia, as a librarian, I know several people, and also several people in various fields, that often teach and talk with their students about how to do resources and do research, and talk about the information resources that you should use, the validity of those resources. They talk about that every day, each and every day, in so many different disciplines. Yet I still meet people that are often on their way out of school that have never known that those resources exist, even though there have been people who look like me and others that come to classes, that hold seminars. This isn't criticism, this isn't shade about it. This is just the way that this is just the way that it is. And it's also true that I think that this is a disconnection for people that are outside of academia. Like how are you doing your research when it isn't connected to coursework, when it isn't connected to a paper or a peer-reviewed article or a book, when you're just talking about, hey, doing your research in terms of something that you're interested in, that's in your everyday life. And whether that's everyday life, personal, or everyday life, and it's a broader concern that you might have, we don't often talk about that, or it's not talked about enough, in my opinion. And I could be absolutely wrong, but I'm just thinking oftentimes there isn't a lot of discussion on that, or at least the discussion of that. I think there needs to be more teaching and more training on that. But I don't know who would actually come to that, because getting people to pay attention these days, hard out here in these streets. And I was just really annoyed. Well, why would you write that under my post? You could just scroll by, and I too probably could have just scrolled by. But I was like, hey, I'm gonna just provide, just a little tips. And see, but I also think about this on a broader level, because I'm, over here analyzing podcast episodes, and you see, and when you're thinking about a podcast episode, it could talk about a wide array of topics, and oftentimes in some of these podcast episodes, I'm finding people talk about the United States and Israel's relationship. And you hear conversation about ceasefire. You hear conversations that talk about, well, we shouldn't be over there. Conversations about what it has meant when some scholars make certain, or some everyday people make certain statements and they've lost their job. There's conversations about how more people should be standing up, and more people should be doing this, more people should be doing that, more people shouldn't be doing this. And no matter where you find yourself in this discussion, what I'm often thinking about as I'm sitting here, coding these transcripts is, and I wrote it down, what would it take to dismantle or transform the policy framework itself? Because you're talking about a policy that has been in existence for 62 years. That relationship has been institutionalized through foreign aid packages, congressional legislation, defense contracts, and diplomatic agreements. You're talking about geopolitics. And geopolitics is the study of how geography, power, and international relationships shape the political decisions and stages of nations. So while the president sets the tone, Congress signs the checks, and the State Department manages the relationship. And I still go back to my question, what would it take to dismantle or transform the policy framework itself? This, to me, would mean rethinking foreign aid law, military assistance agreements, and how the United States defines strategic interests. And that is equally important and insightful to the conversation as the opinions, as the history, as the who should be doing this and who should be doing that. Because if you don't start there, we're just talking. We're just talking at each other, and all we're doing is arguing. That's all I got. I got to go do my actual work, but that was something that was interesting that happened to me. I also know about this topic because a couple of years ago, I took Race and Cultural Critique. We read the book. I had to do a presentation on Keith Felderman's work, Shadow Over Palestine. So those two chapters are chapters that I know. I did think it was a great book because I love the way way he really talked about the United States international relationships, as well as how that's formed over time. And it was really interesting. But that is not the only resource in itself. That was just one that I remember talking about. And I remember all of the other resources that I found at that time to talk about it. And yet, even when you were having that conversation, it was also a conversation that people were scared to have, because there was no record, no recording of it, because it hasn't always been a safe topic to have. It hasn't. And the only thing I'm sharing about it now is that I remember meeting the author and the book, and that's why I knew that resource. And I thought, hey, there's nothing wrong with sharing this information. But oftentimes I go back to my original point. People in their reading comprehension skills, and this isn't shade or me coming for anybody, it's just saying that people in their reading comprehension skills and their understanding, sometimes I'm like, did you read? And it doesn't just happen whether you're talking about hecklers, Kamala Harris and her book tour, and how, and it isn't just US and Gaza or the United States and Israel's relationship that people are heckling, her for. I've seen her heckled for so many different other things over time. I have, but it isn't just this. I can think about this on another level. Is I have followed this person, I Am Kate King, that has opened up a business in Pearl, Mississippi. Fun fact, I love sweets. So yes, and I have gone in my mind, but I don't know. I don't think I need to be driving to Mississippi. It ain't my year, but it's not my year, and I don't think it's ever going to be my year. Mississippi, I don't know. And I say that with respect and deep love for Mississippi. I've been there once, and I tried to stay only in daylight hours. Just being serious, being real. But not the book, but he was talking about the experience of opening his bakery, and he just opened Monday shipping opportunities for shipping cake jars to people. And the problem that he's having is, even though he provided all the information of how you make the order and the parameters of when you'll actually get it, he's gotten numerous disrespectful emails that clearly people didn't read. And then he saw a post that he talked about, yesterday, where he was like, this is the one that did it. Oh, thanks so much for explaining this again. I don't be reading. LOL. Again, how does that connect? The person that wrote under my post. So what? What does this have to do with the original post? I answered the question. Reading comprehension, critical thinking skills, thinking about what people are saying and what they are asking. That in not just the context of I'm at school and I'm doing this paper, but thinking about how does that connect back to everyday life when we're talking about what things that affect us. Policies are all about people. They don't just start because people are out here doing things. They start because there is a policy, there is a procedure, there is something the rules say. And I know there's a whole different conversation about rules, because rules, policies, and procedures affect people in different ways. It is not necessarily universal. And I know people disagree about that. So I'm going to get on out of here. I got to go. But because we talk about this in the way democracy has worked out for different people, the way laws work out for different people, it's not the same. It's not the same. So I'm going to go. But that was just something that was interesting, and I had some time, but I got to get back to coding these episodes. But y'all be careful out here. Y'all have a good day. Then, I know from some of the people that watch this video, if you even hit play, thank you for watching. And also, maybe too, for some people, you don't have this problem at all, but as far as like critical thinking and reading comprehension and reading skills, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful or shade people with that. I'm just thinking we don't have enough conversations about how people need to be doing this in their everyday life, because or maybe it isn't everyday life. For me, there is a disconnect somewhere, and it is getting worse. And it is, because when we think about like information and how many people have podcasts, how many people have they turn, this phone itself, you turn this phone, you could talk to one or millions. And what does that mean long term? What does that mean when your information, when your argument, when the resources that you use, we're not talking about the validity. And even before you get to the conversation about the validity and the factual aspect of your information, we're talking about your comprehension skills, synthesis of information, putting it together. And I'm not saying you got to go to school to do that. I'm just saying we need to talk about how you do that and how that has showed up in ways that are harmful. Because oftentimes when you're looking at some of these videos, when you're looking at some of these resources, some of the things that are coming out, it's like, yeah, you got a valid point, friend, but you're missing the main thing. You could be absolutely right. But if you don't address how the policy started and who handles that, what power speaks to that, we just conversation and going round and round and going nowhere. Y'all be good. Have a good day. Thanks. I'm Wiley. Bye.